Millionaire falls for a humble waitress, but she has no idea who he really is. Life can change in a heartbeat, and sometimes the biggest secrets are hidden behind the simplest smiles. In a bustling city known for its towering skyscrapers and gourmet restaurants, fate brings together two very different worlds. A reclusive millionaire seeking solace in anonymity, and a humble waitress with dreams that barely reach beyond next month's rent. Little does she know that the quiet customer she serves every day holds the power to shatter her perceptions and turn her life upside down. This is a tale of hidden identities, blossoming love, and staggering betrayal. A journey that proves true riches come in many forms. Rosalind Carter never imagined her life would revolve around the constant clatter of dishes and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee. But she found an odd sense of peace in it. At 24, she'd been working at Melanie's Diner in downtown Seattle for the last 2 years to support her ailing mother's medical bills. The diner, with its neon sign flashing open 24 hours against the grey Seattle skies, was a beacon of warm familiarity for truckers, late-night revelers, and early-morning commuters alike. She stood behind the counter, rearranging salt and pepper shakers, humming along to the low hum of classic rock playing in the background. Her shift began at dawn, and by 8 a.m., the diner was already bustling with loyal regulars. One of them was Mrs. Chang, a retired teacher who loved to tell stories of her worldly travels over a cup of hot green tea. Another was Tom Watkins, a construction worker with a hearty laugh that echoed through the diner every morning as he recounted the day's work schedule. Rosalind had always been observant, noticing each customer's quirks and preferences. She prided herself on remembering their names, their usual orders, and sometimes even their birthdays. The diner had become her second home. As she refilled cups of coffee, she thought about her dream of finishing her college education. She'd started studying psychology, but had to put it on hold when her mother Celia fell ill with an autoimmune disease. Seattle's living expenses weren't kind, but Rosalind was determined to support her family, no matter the sacrifice. That particular morning, her manager Melanie Beaumont, after whom the diner was named, looked more stressed than usual. Melanie was in her late 50s, a petite woman with blonde hair streaked silver from years of running a business. She fiddled nervously with her wedding ring, trying to hide her anxiety. Rosalind picked up on the tension immediately. "You okay, Mel?" Rosalind asked gently, leaning against the counter. Melanie forced a smile. "Just a surprise health inspection today. We'll pass, I'm sure. But you know me. I always worry." Rosalind squeezed her arm reassuringly. "We'll make sure everything is spotless. Don't worry. I'll keep an eye on everyone's stations." Just then the bell above the diner door jingled. A man in a charcoal grey hoodie and jeans slipped inside the hood, still partially covering his face. He took a seat in the corner booth, the one farthest from the entrance. Something about him felt different. Not menacing, just unusual. Rosalind shook off her curiosity. Another customer, another face to greet. Little did she know her life was about to change. Rosalind approached the corner booth with her usual warm smile order pad in hand. "Good morning," she greeted. "Welcome to Melanie's Diner. Anything I can get you to start off?" The man lowered his hood slightly, revealing sharp blue eyes and light brown hair. He looked to be in his early 30s, with a face that might have graced magazine covers if it weren't partially obscured. There was a hint of exhaustion around his eyes, as though he hadn't slept much. "I'll just have coffee," he murmured, his voice quiet and polite. "Black, please." She scribbled down the order. "Sure thing. Anything else, maybe a muffin or some scrambled eggs?" He shook his head. Coffee's fine. Rosalind offered a friendly nod. Coffee coming right up. She walked away, feeling his gaze follow her. The diner was a swirl of noise, a spatula scraping against the griddle legs, sizzling, and the steady chatter of customers. Yet in that tiny corner, there was an odd sense of stillness around the mysterious newcomer. She delivered his coffee and noticed he had a leather-bound notebook in front of him, though it was closed. "Is that all for now?" she asked. He glanced up the corner of his mouth, curving almost shyly. "Yes, thank you." She gave another polite smile and busied herself with other tables. Throughout the morning rush, she kept an eye on him, curious as to why he'd just sat there sipping coffee so slowly that an entire hour passed before he was halfway through the cup. Periodically, he'd open his notebook, jot something down, then close it again. But he never asked for a refill or made any moves to leave. He seemed content to stay in that booth, observing the diner and the people who came and went. Eventually, Rosalind approached with a pot of fresh coffee. "Would you like a top-up?" His gaze flicked from the notebook to her. For the first time, she noticed a warmth behind those cool blue eyes. "Yes, please," he replied, pushing his cup forward. "Thank you." "Are you a writer?" she asked, nodding toward his notebook. "Or maybe a poet?" He gave a slightly self-conscious chuckle. "I wouldn't say that. Just jotting down some thoughts." Rosalind's curiosity was piqued. "Well, if you ever need a second opinion, I'm here every day. I'd be happy to give it a read." She blushed slightly at her own boldness. It wasn't like her to pry, but something about him intrigued her. He met her gaze. "I'll keep that in mind." Before she could respond, Melanie called her name from behind the counter, waving for assistance. With an apologetic smile, Rosalind excused herself and rushed away. As she did, the man watched her go, his fingers lightly drumming the side of his notebook. He looked down at her name tag, Rosalind, and made a small note on a blank page. The man in the corner booth was, in truth, Ethan Maxwell, one of Seattle's most discreet millionaires. Heir to a tech empire partially connected to Microsoft's global expansions, Ethan had led a life of privilege. His family was not as famous as the Gates or the Bezos families, but close enough to have rubbed shoulders with them at charity galas and high-profile events. He was used to paparazzi lurking at every corner in his early 20s. Over time, though, Ethan learned how to slip beneath the radar. He valued his privacy above all else, a trait that only deepened after a particular scandal he'd never forgotten. In his youth, he had been burned by so-called friends who sold personal details to tabloid newspapers. Headlines screamed rumors about him partying in Ibiza, squandering his inheritance. The backlash tarnished his reputation, and he'd retreated from the limelight, deciding to keep his professional and personal life hidden from prying eyes. Even the mention of his family name could bring unwelcome attention. Now, in his early 30s, Ethan preferred to explore the city in anonymity, dressed in modest clothing and rarely using his last name in everyday interactions. But there was more than curiosity that drew Ethan to Melanie's diner that morning. He had originally come to the neighborhood for a real estate opportunity, scouting locations for a philanthropic foundation he was secretly establishing. He stepped inside for a quick cup of coffee and found himself strangely at ease in the unpretentious environment. Then he saw Rosalind. The sincerity in her eyes and her unforced kindness created a sudden longing in him for simple human connection. He recognized that he was tired of the superficial interactions of high society, tired of constant politeness laced with ulterior motives. As Ethan walked back to his penthouse suite later that day, he navigated the busy streets of Seattle with practiced ease. Nobody recognized him in his hoodie and jeans, which was exactly how he liked it. The city's skyline sparkled under the afternoon sun, and he made a mental note to return to the diner soon. Later that evening, he curled up on a leather sofa in his penthouse overlooking Elliott Bay. The space was sleek, furnished with expensive art and minimalistic design. He tapped the corner of his phone, skimming through messages from his personal assistant, Michael Levine, who handled his business dealings behind the scenes. One text caught his attention. "Ethan, we need your signature on the Fifth Avenue property documents tomorrow. Also, your father wants an update on your upcoming philanthropy event." Ethan replied quickly. "I'll handle it. Tomorrow, 3 p.m. Then he placed the phone aside, letting his mind wander back to Melanie's diner and the waitress named Rosalind. Rosalind ended her shift around 3 p.m., rubbing her sore feet as she walked out of the diner. The morning had been unusually long and taxing, yet she couldn't shake off the memory of the quiet stranger in the corner booth. Despite her best efforts, she'd never managed to ask for his name. Not that it was any of her business, she told herself. Still, a small seed of curiosity was planted. She boarded the aging bus that took her through the busy streets of Seattle toward the modest neighborhood she called home. It wasn't the safest area, run-down apartments, graffiti-lined walls, but the people had a sense of camaraderie that made her feel safe. Every day, she passed the same homeless man named Gary on the corner of 12th and Pine, always offering him a snack or a spare dollar. He would often tip his tattered cap in gratitude. Her stop was at a brick apartment building that had seen better days. She climbed the creaking stairs to the 3rd floor and unlocked the door to a small 2-bedroom unit. There she was, greeted by the faint sound of classical music playing through a set of earbuds. Mom Rosalind called softly. Celia Carter lay on the living room couch. She was fragile and thin, her dark hair now streaked with grey. She pulled out an earbud and smiled weakly. "How was work, honey?" Rosalind slipped off her jacket. "Busy as usual." "How are you feeling?" Celia slowly pushed herself into a sitting position. "Better today. Didn't have a fever. Dr. Matthews said the new medication might help with the pain." Relief washed over Rosalind. Even a small sign of improvement was worth celebrating. Since her mother's autoimmune disease diagnosis, life had become a cycle of doctor's visits, new prescriptions, and endless worry about how to pay for it all. Yet no matter how tough things got, Celia remained her beacon of hope, always offering a smile. Rosalind sank onto the couch beside her mother, describing her day and the strange new customer who barely spoke, but seemed kind. "He felt different, Mom. I can't explain it, but there was this calmness about him." Her mother patted her hand gently. "Sounds like you're intrigued. Maybe he'll become a regular." "Maybe," Rosalind said softly. She then helped Celia to the kitchen table, preparing a simple dinner of chicken broth and crackers. As they ate, the two talked about everything from Celia's upcoming doctor's appointment to the possibility of Rosalind returning to college in a year or so, if finances ever improved. Later that night, as Rosalind crawled into her small bed, she thought about how her life seemed so contained. Each day, she served coffee and comfort food, came home to care for her mother, then slept only to repeat it all the next day. She never complained. Her mother was her priority. Yet she dreamed sometimes of more, of nights without worry, of a future bright with opportunity. Perhaps she mused the stranger in the corner booth was just a fleeting visitor. Or maybe, just maybe, he was part of something bigger she couldn't yet see. Over the next few days, Ethan Maxwell made a habit of visiting Melanie's diner every morning. He always arrived around 7:30 a.m., wearing unassuming clothes, taking the same corner booth. He'd order a cup of black coffee sometimes with a slice of apple pie, and quietly observe the ebb and flow of the diner's patrons. Rosalind noticed him, of course. She brought his coffee with a friendly smile, and sometimes they exchanged brief pleasantries about the weather or how busy the diner was. Still, he remained guarded, never offering more than a handful of words. Yet she felt his eyes lingering on her, not in a predatory way, but in curiosity, like he was trying to piece her together from the small fragments of her day. One Wednesday it was nearly 9 a.m., and Ethan was still nursing his half-empty cup. Rosalind approached with a fresh pot. A refill. He nodded, pushing his cup forward. Thank you. Rosalind carefully poured. You've been coming here quite often. I'm not complaining, she teased, just curious what draws you here. He thought for a moment. I like the atmosphere. Feels real, you know. She smiled at the compliment. It's definitely that. Real people, real stories. He tapped his fingers on the table. Speaking of stories, there's a local event happening tonight. An open mic for storytellers and poets in Capitol Hill. I was wondering if you'd like to come with me. Maybe just to listen, or you could bring something you've written to share. Rosalind blinked in surprise. Me, I'm not a writer. He shrugged. Could still be fun. Or, if you have a poem in mind, you could read it. But no pressure. She hesitated. She rarely went out in the evenings, preferring to keep an eye on her mother. But something in his invitation felt genuine, like a friend inviting her into a hidden world. And she was curious about him, about the potential break from her routine. Still, she needed to ensure her mother would be okay. I'll have to check on my mom's schedule, but... Maybe, she said. A gentle smile tugged at his lips. Let me know. I'll leave a ticket with the hostess if you decide to come. As she walked away to tend to other customers, her heart fluttered with a mix of excitement and apprehension. She knew almost nothing about this man, not even his last name. Yet in that brief exchange, she felt a sense of connection she hadn't experienced in a long time. Later that afternoon, she found herself lingering at the diner after her shift ended, talking to Melanie about how best to reheat soup for her mother and finishing some last-minute tasks. As she finally stepped out, she noticed an envelope tucked against the side of the register with her name scribbled on it in neat handwriting. Inside was a single ticket to an event called Seattle's Soulful Voices, along with a small note. Hope you can make it. Ethan. So that was his name, Ethan. It felt both modern and timeless. She held the ticket carefully as though it might slip away. She glanced around the empty diner, her mind buzzing with possibilities. Maybe tonight her world would expand just a little. That evening, after preparing dinner and making sure her mother was comfortably set with everything she needed, Rosalind made a decision that felt both thrilling and nerve-wracking. She would go to the open mic event, with her mother's gentle encouragement. You deserve some time for yourself, Rosie. She quickly freshened up. A floral sundress and a light jacket would have to do. She hopped on the bus to Capitol Hill, her stomach swirling with anticipation. The open mic venue, a cozy cafe-bar hybrid named the Blue Lantern, was tucked between an indie bookstore and a small art gallery. Outside, a neon sign glowed softly, and a chalkboard sign read, Tonight, Seattle's Soulful Voices doors at 7 p.m. Rosalind hesitated at the entrance, scanning the crowd. Young artists mingled with older beatnik types, sipping craft coffee or cheap wine. The air smelled of incense and espresso, and a faint melody of acoustic guitar drifted through the open door. She spotted Ethan in a corner, leaning against a pillar. He wore a simple black sweater and jeans, but carried himself with a quiet confidence. He noticed her immediately and waved her over. You made it, he said, a note of relief in his voice. She smiled, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. Couldn't let the ticket go to waste. They found seats near the small stage. One by one, poets and spoken word artists took the mic, sharing stories of heartbreak, hope, and everything in between. Rosalind found herself moved by the raw honesty of it all. No filters, just life in its purest emotional form. During the performances, Ethan leaned in and asked softly, "What do you think so far?" She turned to him, her eyes shining. "I love it. I never realized how powerful words could be spoken out loud like this." He nodded in agreement. Words have a certain magic when shared openly. After several performances, a young woman in a bohemian dress announced a short break. Applause erupted, and the crowd scattered to refresh their drinks. Rosalind glanced around, noticing how Ethan seemed to blend seamlessly into this creative atmosphere, yet still kept a kind of distance. He tapped his notebook thoughtfully. "I was thinking of reading something, but I'm still deciding." "You write?" Rosalind asked, her voice tinged with genuine surprise. "I thought you said you weren't a writer." He shrugged, smiling. "I dabble. Nothing special." Before she could probe further, a middle-aged man with an easy laugh and a guitar slung over his shoulder approached. "Ethan." "Didn't expect to see you here tonight," he greeted warmly. "Is this your friend?" The man was Michael Levine, Ethan's personal assistant, but of course Rosalind didn't know that. "Oh, this is Rosalind," Ethan introduced simply. "Rosalind, this is Michael." Michael eyed Ethan knowingly, but didn't reveal anything. "Nice to meet you, Rosalind. I'm just here to enjoy the performances. Maybe share a song." He patted his guitar. They made small talk, then Michael excused himself to speak with the venue's organizer. Rosalind turned to Ethan with a curious smile. "You seem to have connections everywhere, huh?" He chuckled, slightly on edge at how close the truth was. "Seattle isn't that big, really." After the break, the lights dimmed again, and the open mic resumed. Ethan leaned over and whispered, "Would you mind if I go up there?" She blinked. "You want to read something?" He nodded. "I wrote something recently, about the feeling of wanting to be seen for who you are, not what people assume." Rosalind's heart fluttered. "Of course, I'd love to hear it." As Ethan walked toward the stage, Rosalind found her pulse quickening. There was something about him that radiated sincerity. She had no idea that he was a wealthy heir, no inkling of the tangled secrets behind his quiet demeanor. To her, he was simply Ethan. The man who enjoyed black coffee and wrote down his thoughts in a leather notebook. When he took the microphone, the hush that settled over the room was tangible. People listened as Ethan read a prose poem about shadows and light, about the strain of existing in a world that only wants a particular image of you, and the longing to break free from that mold. His voice, though steady, carried an undercurrent of vulnerability. Rosalind felt tears prick at her eyes. His words hit close to home, the struggle of feeling trapped by circumstances, the yearning for true understanding. When he finished, the applause was gentle but heartfelt. He returned to his seat beside her, cheeks slightly flushed. "What did you think?" She couldn't hide her emotion. "It was beautiful, Ethan. You spoke right to my heart." In that moment, their connection deepened. Neither realized just how much their stories would soon intertwine in ways neither of them could have predicted. As the night wound down, Ethan offered to walk Rosalind to her bus stop. They stepped out into the brisk Seattle air, the city lights reflecting off damp pavements. Rosalind clutched her jacket tighter, suddenly aware of how late it was. "That was really wonderful," she said, replaying the open mic performances in her mind. "Thank you for inviting me." Ethan cast her a gentle smile. I'm glad you came. I'm not usually one for social events, but that place always feels different, more authentic. She nodded, choosing her words carefully. You don't seem like the type who likes crowds, but you seem comfortable here in the city. They strolled toward the bus stop, where a small group of people waited under a flickering street lamp. It was a moment of calm, punctuated by distant traffic and the occasional siren. Rosalind wanted to ask him more about himself, but she was unsure how to bridge the gap between small talk and personal history. About my poem, Ethan ventured the one about being seen. Sometimes I feel like people only know a version of me that isn't really me. Have you ever felt that way? She smiled ruefully. Every day. I feel like my life is all about managing the diner, taking care of my mother. People see me as this hard-working waitress, but inside I have so many dreams I can't even begin to chase. He nodded, empathy lighting his eyes. I understand. Suddenly, a black SUV slowed near the curb. The window rolled down, revealing Michael Levine in the driver's seat. Hey, Ethan, do you need a ride? Rosalind gave Ethan a curious look. Is that your friend from earlier? Yeah. Michael. He insisted on driving me home tonight. Ethan responded carefully, avoiding any mention of the real reason Michael was around to ensure Ethan's security and manage behind-the-scenes affairs. Michael smiled politely. Rosalind, was it? I can give you a ride too if you'd like. Her first instinct was to decline. She hardly knew these men, and she was wary of imposing or risking safety. But Ethan's reassuring nod made her hesitate. I'd appreciate that, she said quietly. My bus might not come for another 15 minutes. She climbed into the back seat, while Ethan took the passenger side. As they drove, the city lights blurred through the tinted windows, and conversation was minimal. Michael asked general questions about the open mic event, and Rosalind mentioned how it was her first time attending. Soon they arrived at Rosalind's apartment. She thanked Michael and stepped out. Ethan followed, just for a moment, to say a proper goodbye. The SUV idled behind them. This is me, Rosalind said, gesturing to the old brick building. Thank you for everything tonight. Ethan glanced up at the worn exterior, a pang of concern twisting in his chest. He hoped she was safe here. It was my pleasure, he replied sincerely. Good night, Rosalind. She smiled softly. Good night, Ethan. The moment lingered thick with unspoken words. Then she slipped into the building, and Ethan watched until the door closed behind her. He returned to the SUV with a subdued sigh. Michael glanced at him in the rearview mirror. She seems lovely. Ethan nodded, lost in thought. She is. Neither man spoke for the remainder of the ride. In the back of Ethan's mind, he already felt the pull of conflicting worlds, his hidden wealth, his responsibilities, and the quiet peace he found in the diner and in Rosalind's presence. He was caught in a precarious balance, hoping he wouldn't tip too far in one direction. A week passed in a blur of routine and subtle changes. Ethan continued to visit Melanie's diner each morning, though sometimes just for a few minutes, if his schedule was tight. He and Rosalind struck up a gentle friendship. No grand declarations or confessions, just two people enjoying brief moments of real conversation in a hectic world. Word spread around the diner that the quiet guy in the corner had actually taken Rosalind out to an event. The morning regulars teased her good-naturedly, and even Melanie raised an eyebrow in curiosity. Rosalind blushed at the attention, but felt a small flicker of excitement in her chest. She'd long accepted a life devoid of romance, focusing on her mother's needs. Now, a tiny door seemed to be opening. One rainy afternoon, she finished her shift and walked outside only to find Michael Levine leaning against a sleek black sedan, an umbrella in hand. Rosalind's heart skipped a beat. She looked around for Ethan, but he was nowhere to be seen. Michael stepped forward, offering the umbrella. "Rosalind, hi. Ethan asked me to pick you up." Her brow furrowed. "Pick me up? What's going on?" Michael cleared his throat. "He's at a property downtown and would like you to join him for dinner afterward. Something about wanting your opinion on a new cafe he might invest in." She wasn't sure how to respond. The invitation felt sudden, and she still knew very little about Ethan's life, except that he occasionally wrote poetry and seemed oddly well connected. But her curiosity outweighed her caution. "All right, let me just text my mom," she said, pulling out her phone. After confirming that Celia was at home and comfortable, she nodded at Michael. "Lead the way." They drove through the slick streets of Seattle, passing upscale boutiques and towering glass buildings. Rosalind watched the cityscape fly by, noticing how Michael skillfully navigated the traffic. Eventually, they stopped in front of a large commercial building with a modern design and tinted windows. The sign near the entrance read, "Maxwell Innovations." Rosalind stepped out, puzzled. "This is... where are we?" Michael gestured for her to follow him inside. The lobby was sleek with polished marble floors and a minimalist art installation. A receptionist smiled politely, but didn't stop them as they headed to a private elevator. Rosalind felt her nerves mounting. The elevator opened into a spacious floor, a conference room visible through glass walls. There Ethan stood, dressed in a crisp blazer and black trousers, conferring with a small group of people. He spotted her, offered a slight smile, and wrapped up his conversation. As the group dispersed, Ethan hurried over. "Rosalind, I'm sorry if this felt abrupt," he said quietly. "I was hoping to show you something before dinner, but a meeting ran long." She looked around, still in awe. "What is this place?" He paused, struggling for an explanation that wouldn't give away everything. "My family has some business interests here. I sometimes help manage them. I thought you might be curious about how coffee shops get funded, how property decisions are made. Since you're around coffee every day, I'd value your perspective." Rosalind raised an eyebrow, but she decided not to push too hard. Maybe Ethan was just trying to share a piece of his life with her. "Sure, I'd love to learn." Relief flickered across his face. "Great. Then after this, I promise we'll grab dinner somewhere less corporate." She nodded, half smiling. The man before her seemed both familiar and impossibly distant, like he lived in two different realities. And in that moment, she wasn't sure which version of Ethan she was speaking to. The rain subsided just in time for Ethan and Rosalind to leave the office building. True to his word, Ethan led her to a cozy Italian restaurant a few blocks away, one that wasn't upscale or pretentious, but offered a warm ambiance and mouth-watering aromas. They were seated at a corner table, candlelight flickering against the red brick walls. Rosalind scanned the menu, appreciating the casual vibe after the imposing glass and steel environment of Maxwell Innovations. She glanced at Ethan, wondering whether to ask about what she'd seen. His family's business, his own role in it. It all felt so different from the Ethan she'd gotten to know over coffee cups and open mic nights. "How did you learn about property investments?" she asked, gently breaking the ice. He studied her expression for a moment, then sighed. "Truthfully, I've grown up around it. My father invested in real estate and tech ventures. I guess I picked up some knowledge by osmosis." She sipped her water. "So you're part of the Maxwell family?" It wasn't a question, more of an observation. The name Maxwell Innovations had been plastered all over that office. He nodded slowly. I am. But I prefer to keep a low profile. Rosalind's heart fluttered with confusion. She recalled reading about Maxwell Innovations once in a business magazine, but the article had been vague, overshadowed by bigger headlines about companies like Amazon and Microsoft. Still, it was clear the Maxwell name carried weight. Why, she asked quietly. Why keep it hidden? He exhaled, looking down at his hands. People treat you differently when they realize you have money. They want things from you, partnerships, favors, even just to be seen with you. I've had experiences where I couldn't tell if someone liked me, or for my net worth. His gaze locked onto hers, vulnerable and earnest. I didn't want to lose the chance to be seen as just a normal guy, especially by someone I truly enjoy spending time with. Rosalind felt her chest tighten. So that was the undercurrent she'd sensed, the quiet tension beneath his polite demeanor. She reached across the table, gently resting her hand on his. I'm sorry you've had to deal with that. I understand wanting to be seen for who you really are. He smiled with relief, intertwining his fingers with hers, for a brief, tender moment before releasing them. A server arrived, ready to take their order, and they both pulled back. They chose simple dishes spaghetti carbonara for her, chicken Alfredo for him, and the conversation resumed on a lighter note, from their favorite childhood memories to the best places to visit in Seattle. Yet an unspoken weight lingered. Rosalind wasn't upset that he was wealthy. She was overwhelmed by the potential gap between their lives. How would her humble world fit into Ethan's? And Ethan, for his part, worried that this reveal might change everything, that the sincerity he'd found at Melanie's diner would slip away once she saw the bigger picture of his status. By the end of dinner, they walked back out into the night air, the city alive with headlights and neon signs. Ethan insisted on driving her home again, but she asked if they could walk a few blocks first, just to prolong the moment of quiet connection. With hands occasionally brushing, they strolled the wet sidewalks, talking about nothing and everything at once. The tension eased, replaced by the soothing sound of footsteps on pavement and soft laughter shared between them. Neither knew that bigger storms lay ahead, family expectations, financial entanglements, and the relentless swirl of gossip. But for one evening, they savored the gentle closeness and the possibilities unfolding with every breath. The next morning, Rosalind woke up with a warm glow still lingering from the night before. She found herself smiling absent-mindedly as she prepared her mother's breakfast, thinking of the way Ethan had opened up to her. The revelation of his wealth was jarring, but it also explained so much. She felt a renewed sense of curiosity about him, about his life, his struggles, and what it meant for them. Little did she know, word spreads quickly in a city that thrives on whispers and speculation. By the time she arrived at the diner, Melanie was pacing behind the counter, her brow creased with worry. Rosalind. I need to talk to you, Melanie said, pulling her aside. She gestured toward the corner booth, Ethan's usual spot where a pair of sharply dressed individuals sat scanning the diner with hawk-like eyes. Those people are from some magazine, I think. They were asking about you, and about Ethan Maxwell. Rosalind's heart lurched. Magazine. Why, Melanie shook her head. I'm not sure, but they want a statement. Something about Ethan being spotted here frequently. A chill washed over Rosalind. She glanced at the corner booth. One of the individuals, a woman with a smartphone out, locked eyes with her, then immediately snapped a photo. Rosalind gritted her teeth and marched over. Excuse me, can I help you with something? The woman pocketed her phone. Yes, actually. We represent the Seattle Herald. We're investigating rumors that Ethan Maxwell, the elusive heir to Maxwell Innovations, has been frequenting this establishment. Care to comment on your relationship with him?" Rosalind blinked, suddenly feeling exposed. "I'm just a waitress. He's a customer. That's it." The man with the woman smirked. "Word has it you two are dating. Seen together at an open mic, then at a fancy dinner last night. Care to confirm?" Her cheeks burned. "I have nothing to say." "Please leave." They exchanged glances, then stood up. "We'll be in touch," the woman said, tapping her phone ominously. They left the diner, leaving Rosalind rattled and upset. Melanie rushed over, placing a reassuring hand on Rosalind's shoulder. "I'm so sorry. I had no idea they'd come in like that." Rosalind swallowed hard, forcing composure. "It's not your fault. I just didn't realize this would happen." She felt a weight settle in her chest, the gap between her life and Ethan's looming larger than ever. She sent him a quick text message once she found a quiet moment. "Rosalind, some reporters came by the diner asking about you, about us." For an hour there was no reply. Anxiety coiled in her stomach, threatening to consume her. Finally her phone buzzed. "Ethan, I'm so sorry. Are you okay? I'll handle this. Meet me at 8 p.m. at the waterfront park. Please." She stared at the screen, relief and dread mingling. She wasn't angry at Ethan, but she feared the complications his world was now bringing into hers. For Rosalind, it had only ever been about honesty and hard work, about caring for her mother and living a simple life. She never asked for paparazzi or tabloids. Yet as 8 p.m. approached, she found herself heading toward the waterfront, heart pounding, determined to see what Ethan had to say and whether their fragile connection could survive the storm. A gentle breeze wafted off Puget Sound, carrying the scent of salt water and distant seaweed. The sun had set, leaving the waterfront illuminated by streetlights and the dim glow of the Seattle skyline. Rosalind walked along the promenade, scanning the sparse crowd for Ethan. She spotted him near a railing overlooking the water hands, tucked into the pockets of his dark coat. He noticed her immediately and approached concern etched across his features. "Rosalind, I'm so sorry. I had no idea they'd go to the diner." She took a breath, trying to steady her emotions. "Ethan, I'm not upset with you for being wealthy, but I didn't sign up for snooping reporters or to be in the spotlight." He nodded grimly. "I know. This is exactly why I keep a low profile. Once word gets out, everything becomes complicated." She folded her arms, the chill in the air, matching the unease in her chest. "So, what do we do now?" Ethan sighed. "My father's legal team will contact the newspaper, but there's only so much they can do. They can't stop the press from speculating. I wanted to see if you were all right and if you still want to continue seeing me." She studied his face. In the soft light of the lamppost, he looked genuinely distressed, remorseful even. A surge of protectiveness rose within her. She didn't want to become tabloid fodder, but she also didn't want to lose the connection they had built. "I do want to keep seeing you," she admitted softly. "But I'm worried about my mom. She has enough stress with her health. The last thing I need is reporters hounding her or her voice caught in her throat at the thought." Ethan reached out lightly, resting a hand on her shoulder. "I promise I'll protect you both. I can provide security if necessary, or relocate you temporarily if things get worse." She tensed, stepping back. "Relocate us, Ethan. I'm not some charity case. And I can't just pack up my life because of paparazzi. What about my job at the diner? My mother's doctors?" He lowered his gaze, realizing how his offer might have sounded. "I didn't mean it that way. I want you to be safe. I want to help." Warm tears threatened at the corners of her eyes. She blinked them away. "I appreciate that, but I'm not looking for a savior. I just want some normalcy." Ethan cupped her face gently. "And that's all I want, too. Something real, not touched by greed or publicity. I just want you." His words, laden with vulnerability, slipped past her defenses. Against her better judgment, she leaned in, allowing him to press a tender kiss to her forehead. The weight of the world seemed to lift, if only for a moment, as they stood there, hearts beating in tandem near the lapping waves of the waterfront. But even as their bond deepened, both of them sensed the storm was only beginning. In the distance, camera flashes flickered like tiny sparks in the darkness, a persistent reminder that their stolen moment of intimacy wasn't truly private. Unknown to them, a photographer from the Seattle Herald lurked lens-focused, capturing every intimate second. The following days brought a deluge of unwanted attention. Photos of Ethan and Rosalind at the waterfront appeared online, accompanied by headlines like "Mystery Waitress Captures Elusive Heir's Heart" and "Lowly Diner Girl Bags." Billionaire Bachelor. Rosalind's stomach churned at the condescension dripping from every word. At first, the diner patrons treated it like gossip, fodder. Some teased Rosalind, others expressed support. But soon the tone changed. Strangers began stopping by the diner with phones out, trying to catch a glimpse of the billionaire's girlfriend. A few brazenly approached her, spouting invasive questions, while one or two expressed jealousy or even hostility. Melanie tried her best to shield Rosalind, but business was also booming from the publicity, which created its own tension. Then, in a cruel twist of fate, Rosalind's mother started receiving anonymous messages, threats accusing her of being a gold digger, hateful notes that left Celia trembling with fear. Rosalind felt powerless. She confided in Ethan, who responded by offering immediate solutions, private security, legal action, even paying for Celia to stay in a safe location. But Rosalind refused to uproot her life just because of gossip. She wrestled with guilt for rejecting his help, yet she also worried that taking it would only confirm the tabloid's narrative that she was mooching off him. One chilly evening after a particularly distressing day, she arrived at her apartment to find Ethan waiting inside, talking quietly with her mother. Celia sat bundled in a blanket, sipping tea. She looked frail but determined, as if steeling herself for a serious conversation. Ethan let himself in with the spare key in the flower pot, Celia explained. "I told him he could wait." Rosalind shot Ethan a tense look, but swallowed her irritation. "What's going on?" He stood and took her hands, a troubled expression clouding his features. "Rosalind, I can't watch you and your mother be terrorized like this." Celia nodded, her eyes filled with both gratitude and worry. "He's been telling me about a place where I could stay temporarily, some sort of private property his family owns in a quieter neighborhood. The doctors there are good too, apparently." Rosalind's chest constricted. You really want to leave here?" Celia looked down at her trembling hands. "I just want some peace, honey. I'm tired of the phone calls, the knocks at the door." "But I won't do it if you don't agree." Ethan's grip on Rosalind's hand tightened. "I know this is all coming at you fast, but the tabloids are relentless. Please, let me take care of you both." Confusion warred with her instincts. Part of her longed for relief, for safety. Another part feared becoming dependent on Ethan. Could they maintain any sense of normalcy in his gilded world where paparazzi and power brokers loomed around every corner? Finally, she exhaled, her shoulders sagging under the weight of responsibility. "Okay, let's at least see the place. But I'm not quitting my job. And I'm not letting you pay all the bills." Ethan nodded, relief flooding his features. Celia gave her a weak smile, hope flickering behind her eyes. They were stepping deeper into Ethan's realm, and there was no turning back. In that moment, none of them could foresee the explosive secrets and betrayals still to come. Ones that would test their love, their loyalty, and the very foundations of who they believed each other to be. Ethan's private property turned out to be a serene lake house on the outskirts of Bellevue, complete with a small dock and a tranquil view of Lake Sammamish. Nestled among tall evergreens, the place offered a sense of seclusion, far from the prying eyes of the press. Rosalind and Celia moved in, at least temporarily, under the guidance of a private nurse who helped manage Celia's medication schedule. For the first time in months, Celia slept peacefully, the lines of stress gradually fading from her face. Yet, as Rosalind settled into the lake house, she felt a growing tension between the life she'd known and the one Ethan was trying to usher her into. She continued working her morning shifts at Melanie's diner, commuting back and forth. On her off days, Ethan would drive her in his sleek Tesla or arrange for Michael to chauffeur her to the diner and back, always ensuring the paparazzi lost track of them. Despite the relative calm of the lake house, rumors swirled in the tabloid world. They accused Rosalind of leeching off Maxwell money, while some even dredged up her father's past, a small-time gambler who'd left her and her mother years ago, twisting the narrative to suggest Rosalind came from a family of schemers. Late one evening, after Rosalind finished her shift, she arrived at the lake house to find Ethan pacing in the living room, his jaw tense. Spread out on the coffee table were documents bearing Maxwell Innovations letterhead. "Hey," she said, softly, setting down her bag. "Is everything all right?" He looked up, eyes clouded with concern. "My father wants me to step forward, publicly, give a press conference to clear the air about us. He says it'll help, but I know it'll just feed the stories." Rosalind's heart sank. A press conference that sounds invasive. It is. But he thinks it's better than letting the tabloids speculate. Ethan raked his fingers through his hair in frustration. "And there's more. He wants me to sign off on a formal statement about you, about your character, your background, like it's some contract negotiation." She felt a flash of anger. "I'm not a business deal, Ethan." His voice softened. "I know. That's why I'm torn. I don't want to drag you through something so public, but my father's pushing hard. He's threatening to pull financial support from some of my philanthropic projects if I don't comply." Rosalind stared at him, realization dawning. "So your father is basically using blackmail to control how you handle our relationship." Ethan's silence confirmed it. A bitter taste filled her mouth. "What if we just go public on our own terms? A small interview explaining who I am and who you are, but without your father's spin." He considered it, lips pressed thin. "That might work, but it could still open us up to more scrutiny. Are you willing to do that?" Her eyes flicked to the hallway where Celia was resting. "I'd do anything to end this ordeal, but I also need to protect my mom." Before they could discuss further, a knock sounded at the door. It was Michael, face pale, breath short. "We've got a problem," he said gravely. "Somehow the press found out about this property. They're swarming at the main gate." Rosalind's stomach twisted. So much for sanctuary. Ethan's eyes flashed with determined anger. "I'll handle it." As he marched outside, Rosalind felt a tremor of fear and resolve. If this was the price of loving Ethan, could she truly handle it? She followed him, bracing for the next wave of intrusion, that threatened the fragile peace they'd built. A barrage of camera flashes assaulted Ethan as soon as he opened the front door. The distant sound of shouting voices cut through the tranquil darkness. Security guards hired by the Maxwell family had formed a barricade near the gated entrance, but the reporters outside hurled questions over their shoulders like grenades. Rosalind hung back, watching from the doorway, her heart pounding. She spotted a few cameras pointed in her direction, and she instinctively shrank from the exposure. Ethan, jaw clenched, spoke in a low voice to Michael. "Tell them to leave, or we'll press charges for trespassing. This is private property." Michael nodded and strode toward the gate, relaying the ultimatum. Gradually, some reporters began dispersing under the watchful eye of security. Others lingered, continuing to snap photos from a distance. Celia, awakened by the commotion, appeared in the hallway behind Rosalind, clutching a robe around her shoulders. "Rosie, what's happening?" Rosalind gently guided her mother back to her room, trying to calm her frayed nerves. "Just some reporters, Mum. Everything's okay. Security is handling it." The older woman's eyes brimmed with tears. "I hate seeing you go through this, Rosie. All because of me. It's not your fault, Mum." Rosalind whispered fiercely. "We'll figure it out." Once Celia was settled, Rosalind returned to the living room, where Ethan stood by the large windows, his posture rigid. He heard her footsteps and turned, tension etched on his face. "They're not leaving. Some are just outside the gate waiting." "What do we do?" she asked, heart heavy. His voice was clipped. "My father thinks this is the perfect time for the press conference. Strike while the iron is hot, he says." Rosalind bit her lip, anger building. "Your father seems more concerned about the family's image than about your happiness." Ethan's gaze softened. "He's old school, and he's never understood my desire for privacy. To him, everything is about the company's public perception." A sudden, almost desperate idea flickered through Rosalind's mind. What if we go on social media ourselves? Just you and me. A simple video telling people to respect our privacy. Telling them how we met on our own terms. Ethan blinked, considering. It might help humanize us. Show that we're not some scandalous headline. Rosalind took a deep breath. "Let's do it. I'm tired of hiding, of letting other people control the narrative." His lips curled into a small, appreciative smile. "I'll ask Michael to set it up." That night, in the quiet glow of a lamp-lit living room, they recorded a short video on Ethan's phone. They introduced themselves plainly. Ethan Maxwell, a private businessman, and Rosalind Carter, a waitress who'd captured his heart through shared authenticity. They spoke openly about meeting at Melanie's diner, about the unexpected connection that blossomed. They asked for empathy for space and promised they would not be intimidated by invasive tactics. Despite their shaky nerves, the video felt genuine. Ethan posted it to his rarely used social media account, which instantly caused a surge of online activity. Likes, shares, comments poured in at an alarming rate. But as they finished, relief mingled with apprehension. Stepping into the spotlight willingly was a leap of faith, one that could either quell the media frenzy or fan it into an inferno. All they could do was wait, hoping the world would see their honest intentions and finally let them breathe. The reaction to their video was swift and intense. Overnight, Ethan and Rosalind began trending on various social platforms. Surprisingly, a wave of support emerged, with many commending their honesty and criticizing the tabloids for invading their privacy. Others remained skeptical, calling Rosalind an opportunist. But the negativity was partly drowned out by the wave of empathy that came from people who saw two human beings wanting an authentic connection. At the lake house, early morning sunlight streamed through the windows. Rosalind scrolled through an endless feed of comments, her emotions swinging like a pendulum. One moment she felt hopeful, reading kind messages from strangers who believed in their love story. The next she shuddered at vicious trolls, spewing hateful words. Ethan brewed fresh coffee in the kitchen, glancing over occasionally. "How's it looking?" he asked quietly. She sighed, setting the phone aside. "It's a mixed bag. But at least the conversation is more balanced now. It's not just tabloids controlling the narrative." He set 2 steaming mugs on the table. "I'll take that as a win." Celia entered looking more rested than she had in months. She gave them both a small smile. "You two have caused quite a stir." Rosalind gently placed a hand on her mother's. "How are you feeling?" "Better, thanks to the nurse and the peace of this place," Celia replied, her gaze flicking over to Ethan. "And thanks to your kindness, Ethan." He shook his head. "I'm just glad you're improving." They sipped coffee in comfortable silence. Eventually, Ethan cleared his throat. "So I have something else to share. I spoke to my father last night. He saw the video, and while he's not entirely thrilled about our approach, he's backing off the press conference idea." A spark of relief lit Rosalind's eyes. "That's good news." Ethan nodded, then hesitated. "He also invited us to a family gathering next week, a private event, strictly immediate family. He wants to meet you, Rosalind." Her stomach did a nervous flip. Meeting Ethan's father after all the turmoil, after the clear disapproval the man seemed to harbor. Was she ready for that? Celia squeezed her hand. "You should go," she encouraged softly. "Better to face him directly. Show him who you really are." Rosalind exhaled, steeling herself. "Okay, I'll do it." Ethan placed a reassuring hand over hers. "I'll be right by your side." In the days that followed, the media attention began to wane slightly. The tabloids found new stories to chase, and many of the more persistent reporters lost interest once they realized there was no scandal to unearth. Still, the looming family gathering cast a shadow of anxiety over Rosalind's newfound sense of calm. She tried to keep busy returning to a few shifts at Melanie's diner, grateful for the normalcy of pouring coffee and chatting with regulars. Every so often, though, her mind drifted to the upcoming confrontation with Ethan's father. This man had the power to make or break Ethan's philanthropic dreams, and might also try to tear them apart if he deemed her unworthy. As the day approached, Rosalind gathered her courage, reminding herself that she had survived far worse in life. If she and Ethan were to build a real future together, then facing his family was a necessary step. And so, with cautious hope and trembling determination, she braced herself for yet another trial on the path to love and acceptance. The night of the family gathering arrived with a swirl of nerves and anticipation. Ethan and Rosalind drove in tense silence to a stately country estate about an hour outside Seattle, a place that epitomized old-money grandeur. Towering hedges lined the driveway, and warm light spilled from tall windows, casting golden rectangles onto the manicured lawn. Michael had offered to accompany them for moral support, but Ethan insisted this was a moment for him and Rosalind alone. As they approached the large front doors, Rosalind tried to steady her breathing. She wore a simple, elegant dress, Ethan a tailored suit. Their clasped hands spoke volumes of mutual reassurance. Inside, they were greeted by a butler who escorted them to a lavish living room where Ethan's father, Harrison Maxwell, sat with a dignified air. A large portrait of the Maxwell family hung over the fireplace, Ethan's mother, now deceased, smiling warmly from the painted canvas. The sight tugged at Ethan's heart. Harrison rose, extending a hand to Rosalind. "So you're the young woman my son can't stop talking about." She shook his hand, her voice steady. "I am, sir. It's nice to meet you." He surveyed her with practiced eyes, as though assessing a valuable piece of property, and then turned to Ethan. "I trust your video and online statement were your way of handling the press. It caused quite a stir in the boardroom. The family name was on every tongue." Ethan kept his tone respectful, but firm. "It was the best solution for us, Dad. The tabloids were out of control." Harrison allowed a small nod. "I won't deny the situation had to be addressed, but let's make one thing clear. The Maxwell legacy isn't some personal toy for you to play with. You need to balance your personal desires with the family's reputation." Rosalind bristled, but Ethan squeezed her hand. He didn't let his father's reprimand overshadow the reason they'd come. "Dad, I love Rosalind, and I plan to continue seeing her regardless of public opinion." Harrison's gaze flicked between them. "Well, Ms. Carter," he finally said, turning fully to Rosalind, "I suggest we at least get to know you better." And so began an evening of guarded conversation, polite smiles, and subtle power plays. Rosalind held her own answering questions about her background, her mother's health, and her aspirations. She was honest about her waitressing job, her paused college dreams, and her desire to build a meaningful life. Throughout it all, Ethan stayed close occasionally, interjecting to remind his father why he admired Rosalind's strength and integrity. By the end of the night, Harrison remained reserved, yet he offered a slight concession, inviting Rosalind back for a more private family dinner in the coming weeks. In Maxwell terms, that was practically a royal blessing. When they returned to the lake house, Rosalind felt both drained and strangely exhilarated. They had crossed another threshold together, forging a path toward acceptance. There were no guarantees, no perfect endings. But as Ethan pulled her into a tender embrace, whispering, "Thank you for standing by me," she realized that love was a journey of trials, triumphs, and the steadfast choice to face each storm side by side. In that embrace, the simplest truth rang clear. Whether in a neon-lit diner or a mansion's grand hall, they had found something real love that no amount of money or scandal could destroy. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey of hidden identities, relentless paparazzi, and love that defied every obstacle. From the humble clatter of dishes in Melanie's diner to the grandeur of the Maxwell estate, Rosalind and Ethan's story proves that trust, courage, and compassion can unite two very different worlds. If their unwavering devotion in the face of tabloid frenzies and judgmental stares moved you, please consider supporting this channel. By liking, sharing, and subscribing, you help ensure more heartfelt stories rooted in drama, romance, and powerful life lessons reach those who yearn for inspiration. Let this tale remind us all that while wealth and status can create towering walls, a genuine human connection can shatter them, revealing the simple yet extraordinary power of love. So stay tuned for more unforgettable dramas, and thank you for being a part of this wonderful community.